Okay, I want to say good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are joining us from, anywhere in the world. We have a huge number of people that have signed up for what is our first webinar of 2022. So I'd like to wish everyone, both who's joining us today as participants from the Charles University Faculty of Medicine in Hradec Kralove, and everyone joining us across the world on Zoom, on YouTube, on Facebook. We're going to be able to answer all your questions regardless of where you are viewing us today. I want to wish you a happy new year, and let's make 2022 a significantly better one than the last 2 years have been. What I would say is at least we're all used to Zoom now, and this is not exactly a forum which was a novelty years ago. It's now the new normal, but I'm hoping, as we all are, to get back to a new normal of meeting in person, just like we did at the Royal Society of Medicine back in November, which was fantastic to see Professor Rudolph and Pavla back in person, back in London again. We're all a little bit older, a little bit grayer, a little bit wiser, but we are at least delighted to be back in person, meeting everyone and talking to students about the opportunities to study at this fantastic faculty in the beautiful town of Hradec Kralove, which is, again, I will be visiting again this year, thankfully. Now, I just want to introduce everyone today. As I said, we've got people joining us from all across the world. My name is Ben Ambrose. I'm the Managing Director here at Medical Doorway. We've been working with the university for quite some time now, so much so that the 3 students joining us today are nearly at the graduation stage. And it kind of just reminded me when I was talking to them just before we started the webinar, how old I've got and how long I've been working with the faculty. But it's going to be fantastic to come to your graduation ceremony next year, which is been something I've missed out on for the last 2 years with COVID. So I hope to see you there next year as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to first introduce Professor Rudolph, who's the Vice Dean of the English programs at the university. We've got Pavla Sedlarova, who's a very good friend of mine, who's the Director of Communications and External Affairs. And then we've got 3 fantastic students. We've got Maroti, Haja, and Ajita, I think. Has she joined us? I think she has now. Adrija has joined us as well. 3 fantastic British students who I've worked with over the last few years, who are now currently studying medicine at Hradec Kralove and approaching graduation. For those joining us on the different forums, here's how we're going to run the next hour, hour and a half. Professor Rudolph has a presentation which will last about 40 minutes, and then we have the opportunity for everyone to ask questions. Now, in terms of asking questions, guys, there's different ways that you can do it. We have the Q&A feature live, so at the bottom you will see a little icon saying Q&A. If you tap your question into there, we're going to wait till the end. We're going to read your question out. We're not going to disclose who you are, so don't worry if you think your question is silly or it shouldn't be asked. Whatever your question is, please just write it in the Q&A feature. Only myself and the other panelists can see that question. We will read them out, and then we will get one or more of the panel of panelists today to answer those questions. At that point, we're probably going to push a lot more to the students that have joined us today, because effectively they're the people that you really want to hear from. Yeah, you can hear too much of my voice and people do get bored of my voice eventually. So we are going to delegate a lot of those questions to the students because effectively they've lived this experience for the last 5 years. Alternatively, you can even just use the chat feature on the right of the screen. Anything you write on there will only come through to myself or the other panelists. So don't worry if you write something down which you perhaps didn't expect to share publicly. It won't be shared publicly, and anything that we say will be anonymized. So it's not going to be attributed to you as an individual. Alternatively, if you want to ask questions to us offline after this talk, or perhaps you look at the re-recording and think you've got a question, there'll be plenty of opportunities to fire questions to Medical Doorway, either through email, through WhatsApp, through using the link on our website, or even booking a one-to-one Zoom consultation via our booking system on the website as well. That is something which we do every Monday and Wednesday. So without any further ado, Professor Rudolph, just want to introduce yourself briefly to everyone who's joining us today as more people sign up, and I'll pass around before we start the presentation.
Well, hello everyone, and a very good evening from the HK. I realized that the pronunciation of the name of the town where we live, the Hradec Kralove, is kind of like complicated for the people not using the Czech language. That's why I just better call it HK, not to confuse though with the Hong Kong. That's just a very important thing. So I'm very happy to be here. It's been a very long day for me today, so hopefully there will be really a crown and the top event of today. As the Ben said, I'm just the staff member of the faculty I've been teaching here and researching here for past 20 plus years. So I'm a really dinosaur of this faculty. At the same time, I'm of course now in the managing position, being a vice dean, and that is why I'd like to address you today with a little introduction of the place where we all live, where we all work, and just to show you what are the possible kind of selling points of our faculty and how our faculty could be attractive to you as an option if you consider your medical career. That's probably all what I could say about myself. And now, if you give me a second, I'll try to start my presentation. If I do have some kind of issues with that, forgive me, because I'm getting old, and contrary to what the band said, just I'm not used to these brand new modern techniques, and I'm just trying to learn the way of going. So just a couple of seconds, please. Do you see it? Do you see the presentation?
We've got your presentation ready to go, Professor Rudolph.
Very well. So I succeeded and passed this one test. So, okay. As I just said, I do live and I work in HK, and for the past 20 plus years, my career been sort of associated with the Faculty of Medicine in Hradec Kralove, which is part of the Charles University here in the Czech Republic. Well, for those of you, I'm not going to teach you any geographical lesson, but for those of you who might not be entirely sure where the Czech Republic is, it's kind of Central Europe. On the left-hand side, you see it's a very tiny, reddish sort of a place surrounded with much bigger and much more famous, perhaps, countries, but not that far off from the UK. Takes about one and a half an hour by the flight, so it's just not that bad. Most of the people, tourists or other, they know the Czech Republic because of Prague. Prague is our capital and also a seating place of our university, Charles University. Prague is very famous, used to be very famous with the tourists from the UK. And that's the place on the right-hand side over here. That's also where most of the international flights kind of arrive too. But we're not in the Prague. We're in the place which is called the HK. If you follow my direction, you go slightly to east. It's the distance about 1 hour by the highway, which is one of the reasons why you could also consider HK, because the people sometimes complain, okay, I don't want to go anywhere. I would like to safely land in the Prague, and that's it. But that's just not the problem today, because we have a really nice highway, and it takes about 1 hour by car or the bus just to arrive from the HK. So we are just, practically speaking, as far as the Czech Republic is concerned, in Eastern Bohemian region, which is a one advantage, at least from my point of view, as compared to the Prague, is that it takes another kind of 40 minutes by car or by bus, and we're in this northern part, and this is mountains, and it's kind of very beautiful part of our country, where at the moment you could ski and you could enjoy, or the one could enjoy the winter activities, but that's just not related really to the medicine. That might only come if you have a time. So anyway, so we are in the HK, and we are with the Faculty of Medicine, which is part of the Charles. Charles is famous in Central Europe because of its age. It's kind of like the oldest. It's been founded back in the 14th century by our then King Charles, and at the moment it's our largest university in all Czech Republic. So as the data here shows, it features a lot of different faculties. Together is 17 faculties, which are spread out in about three different places along the Czech Republic, including the Prague, Hradec Kralove, and Pilsen. And at the moment it has kind of around the 50,000 students. About almost 18% of them are international. Well, what is a very unique feature about the Charles University, which is often not entirely understood by internationalists, is that the Charles University, as a very exceptional university, has 5 faculties of medicine, which is certainly sometimes a problem for somebody who is interested in Charles and interested in medicine, but he or she doesn't really know what is the difference between these individual faculties of medicine. So there's 5 faculties of medicine, some of them are in Prague, and I'm talking on behalf of the one which is outside the Prague in Hradec Kralove. I have to say that all these faculties of medicine are exactly the same. They give the same sort of education, and they have the same standards, which are, of course, as far as the Charles University is concerned, internationally recognized. Now, the Hradec Kralove, Faculty of Medicine in Hradec Kralove. Again, I'd like to apologize. So first of all, I'll be showing you very nice photographs. The photographs our team and our faculty members took along the time. Of course, these photographs are meant to show you the bright side of the life and thing, but it doesn't mean that I'm a travel agent who tries to introduce the place to spend a holiday, at least not a short-term holiday, because if you want to study medicine, if you want to enroll into our program in general medicine, you have to know that it will take at least 6 years of your time, 6 years of your life. So it's going to be very long holidays you're going to take. But actually, it's very pleasing to know that if you're going to choose this long holiday with us, that you will choose it wisely, and they'll be in a nice place. So we offer at the moment a study program in English, which is the master's program, and it's a program called General Medicine. Now, this program, it's a full master study program, meaning that it is started with the first year, and after 6 years, if the student successfully passes the program, he or she graduates with the title MD, which is internationally recognized title. Locally, we use the title MUDR, which is a Latin abbreviation of Medicina Universae Doctor, which means the same, like a medical doctor. And it's the program which is fully internationally recognized, and which gives any graduate with this title a chance and the right to continue with the so-called postgraduate training in practically any country in the world. So that is important to know from the very beginning. Now, in terms of the practical knowledge, our faculty is not really a large faculty in terms of the absolute numbers of students. For your information, at the moment, we might have around 1,500 students studying in the Czech program, and about 334 plus or minus of international students studying in English program. Every year, our max intake rate is about 105 seats. So every year we have a capacity to accommodate about 105 new coming students. That's the max capacity. The fact is, and the truth is, that we rarely actually fill this maximum quota, which works both ways. In a way, it's very convenient, especially for students, because lesser numbers of students secures more intensive training, because there will be a lesser number of students per given teacher. Another very practical information concerns, of course, the less positive side of the studies, and that's the tuition fee, because of course studies are not free of charge, at least not for those who want to study in English. The tuition fees center around a certain amount of money in Czech crowns, which probably doesn't tell you too much. So that's why we have the information about the conversion rates. It's converted to about 12,000 euros. 1,200 would be too cheap. 12,000 euros, which I guess, according to the current exchange rate, as far as the British pound is concerned, might be something about less than 11,000 British pounds. At the moment, if you would make your little inquiry about the tuition fees of other faculties of medicine in Charles, as well as other faculties of medicine in Czech Republic, it's just one at the lowest end of the range. That doesn't mean that we are intentionally cheap were cheaper than the other faculties, but we simply had the certain policies. But for this upcoming academic year 22-23, it's this fixed amount, and this would be guaranteed for all those who will just join us with the upcoming academic year. Of course, for the future, we cannot really we cannot really confirm, or we cannot how to put it, keep the price in the same, but that's just not your concern, and that should not be concerned for the upcoming academic year 22-23. So starting this autumn. Now, of course, to study medicine means, first of all, a lot of books, a lot of facts crammed in the head. But at the end, or at certain point, comes a true eye-opener, and that is the clinical practices, or actually the contact with the patients and learning the practical, part of the course, and that is, dependent on the availability of the hospital. So in Hradec Kralove, we have the University Hospital. This University Hospital happens to be very close to the faculty facilities, as I will show you. It's the largest facility in the Eastern Bohemian region, featuring a very many employees. Out of that is about 800 plus physicians and the medical doctors. Every year is kind of tens of thousands of patients, which again provides certain security over the excellency of the treatment, and also the possibility that the excellency of the treatment and excellency of the medical interventions to be taught to students. So our students do get exposed to really state-of-the-art techniques, high-tech stuff, and of course it's just not only about the day-to-day activities and the treatment of the patients, but also related research activities, which of course this center of excellence, of course, at certain areas also offers. So it's sort of like a joint venture where not only teaching, but the research and other aspects of the medical life are just to be found, and they could be very conveniently used for the learning purposes by our students. Now, again, getting to more practical points. Of course, what are the requirements for those who are interested to enter studies with us? These requirements are in a way similar to many other faculties of medicine or similar institutions, but in some ways they're also unique. So for one thing, we just require that an applicant just applies through the online application form. So no papers, nothing, just log into our website. And on our website, the system will guide through the step-by-step. The important point is to remember that if somebody is interested in a study starting this autumn and this upcoming academic year, the deadline for the application has been set to end of the April, so 30th of April 2022. The application is again not a free of charge, but again the cost of it is not killing either. It's about kind of 30 British pounds, which needs to be, of course, paid along with the application in order that the application be registered and be fully recognized, processed, and then connected to the later follow-up. Now, I'm interested, I'm even ready to apply. What criteria, what should I fulfill? What sort of credentials should I show in order to apply and successfully enter? Very, very little in our eyes, so no need to provide any specific proofs of some skills, any specific certificates, any charity activities, just anything, just one thing, and that is the proof that I have successfully completed secondary education. And the proof, which will come in the form of a certificate, should be at the latest delivered in our enrollment day. So there are people who, for instance, are applicants who complain, okay, you have this entry at this time, but at this time I'm still not, expected to have my school leaving certificates. Not a problem. It's just, we would take some provisionary sort of like statement, and at the end, maximum by the enrollment date, we need to have the certificate in order for you to be enrolled and to start with us. So that is this part. And the only part which we require of any applicant to as an eligibility criterion is the entrance exam. This entrance exam is specific because every faculty of medicine, every university has its own form of entrance exam. So I guess this is just the most critical part to fully understand what we want in order just not to make mistakes and not to commit some silly errors on that kind. So it's a one round written test, nothing more, nothing less at the moment. This written test is by some older scheme called a multiple choice test. Some people call it single best answer test. Well, it doesn't make any difference because the test is composed of the series of questions which will have ultimately up to 5 possible answers, and out of them only 1 is possible. So it doesn't matter whether we call it MCQ or single best, still 1 answer is only possible. These questions concern 4 areas of the knowledge. They concern the biology, of course, the biology in the 2 parts. It's a biology which we may call like a general biology or cell biology and genetics, like in the scope which is normally taught in the secondary schools and A levels or something. Then there is biology applied to the human body. We call it like a basic human anatomy and physiology in Latin terminology, but it's just very discouraging to many people who say, well, we never study anatomy and physiology in the secondary school. So you should not worry because it's just not really true anatomy and physiology, something like a basic human biology, even though you need to know the elements, like you asked about the heart. So the heart is made of 4 chambers, this and that and that. Then there is a part devoted to chemistry and the part devoted to physics. Each part is worth of 20 questions. So together, if my mathematics is all right, so the test consists of 80 questions, and each question is valued to 1 point if properly answered. If not answered at all, it just gains 0, so it means nothing. But in case it's just answered wrongly, it's penalized. It means that the student loses about 1/4 of the point. You may say, well, that sounds really bad. Well, the reason why we introduced it because we want just to have a generally like a thorough understanding of the student's knowledge, because some students said, well, I've never studied physics, I never studied chemistry, so I will just make it a lottery. I will close my eyes and I will just check some answers. And by the statistical chance, 10, 15, 20% of those questions will eventually be correctly answered. So, in the end, we had no idea about whether the student really knew the stuff or knew the subject, or whether he was just good in sort of, or lucky in sort of like making the qualified guess. So we said, okay, the student has to see the question and decide whether a question is worth of answering because he's or she's reasonably strong in his belief, whether the question would be properly answered or not, or whether the question is something he or she never just heard about and it doesn't dare to answer it. So let's take it. Let's not take the chances, because it's better just not to gain anything, but not to lose anything either. So that it requires a little bit of thinking when just evaluating and answering these questions. Anyway, so the test is to be presented this year, as already pre-agreed with Ben, in the 2 dates, 2 fixed dates organized in London, but of course in a great collaboration with the Medical Doorway. The dates are mentioned here on the slide. So the one will be the end of the April, another would be at the end of May.
The actual exam is actually end of June in London. Actually, we have an exam scheduled in May in Hong Kong, COVID permitting.
Okay,
obviously.
Sorry.
It's basically we have end of June to 1 week. Sorry, end of April, 1 week after Easter. Then we'll have another exam in London towards the end of June, immediately following the end of A-level exams. I will talk to the British students who are tuned in, because it's a little bit different than the students who've gone in the past. And then we do have an exam in May at the end of International Baccalaureate exams scheduled in Hong Kong, which is going to depend on entry rules for Hong Kong, COVID permitting. But we have 3 different opportunities.
Yeah, my mistake, and I do apologize.
Not a problem.
Whatever you say, Ben, you're a boss in this at this point. So at these dates, one of us will physically deliver the tests. The students will write the exam, and in a few days, once we're back, the results are kind of reported to individual students and candidates. Now, what is the kind of philosophy of these tests? Of course, obviously, every faculty, even us, we always seek to have the best students, best candidates, and the only way how we evaluate it at this point is just to have the ones with the best score, which is not really perfect, I admit, but that's just the only criterion we have. So to have just concrete idea about how well you should score in order to kind of like qualify, even if you know that, of course, the physics is not your favorite subject at all, you actually hate it. The chemistry, you're kind of okay, and you love biology, which is the typical configuration of the priorities of all the candidates. So if you make a very simple sums, you know that the biology together forms the 40 questions, which is the 50% of the entire exam. So that means that if you score reasonably well, given the past experiences and given the past sort of like a cutoff, which was around the 50%, sometimes less, sometimes more, sometimes. So, you know, if you love biology, then of course, and if you do biology quite well, you can allow yourself kind of lenience a bit in kind of physics and chemistry, especially if you don't like them. But that's just sort of part of the somehow like a strategic decision you will have to take in order just to just succeed in the test, which I believe is not kind of difficult. And of course, I have a proof of my words because of course you would not know the test, or simply you're not going to jump in on the test only in the time when you would sit it, but you could check it out. You could go to our web page again, and our web page at the moment there is the test we call example test, but it's actually test which was given last year to candidates of the last year who were supposed to start with us past autumn. So this test is in a PDF. You could download it, you could print it out, and you know exactly what kind of questions are being asked. You know exactly what kind of answers were expected. And on top of that, next to this test, you'll find the literature texts. We recommend to those of you who would want just to have the concrete sources of information they could use in order to learn, plus detailed syllabi. That is, you know exactly that if you're going to study biology, your concern is not animals, your concern is not plants. The ecology is important, but not for us, at least for this purpose of exam. You need to focus on the structure of the cell, on the meiosis, and on that stuff. And in the physics, you need to think about a little bit about your robustness of the knowledge and this and that. So, you have all the information readily served to you as long as you're able to log in and just to download on the website the information you need. And even if this would be a problem for you, still, there's plenty of people. The Paula here, study department, you could bother to write an email, drop a message on the Facebook, or just make a phone call or whatever, or even shout, I don't know, and we'll gladly accompany you. We'll gladly just kind of guide you through, and it will give you anything you would want. So these days it's quite simple and quite easy. I would want to be a student myself these days. I remember when I was a student, nobody talked to us. We were all supposed just to figure it out ourselves. So these days, the comfort of of the communication is much more better. Sorry for this reminiscence of the past. Anyway, so let me now just briefly talk about the organization of study, because of course the studies of at the university are perhaps slightly different from the studies you perhaps are used to, what you might expect actually. So what, when, and how? Well, a typical study year of a student of general medicine is the study year, which we'll call an academic study year, which begins in person, I have to say, usually, and it's not like an invention of the Faculty of Medicine, it's usually centrally set by the university. It begins at the beginning of October, typically like a 1st of October, which is the official start of the lectures, practical classes, seminars, and all other real forms of the study. And that would continue until the official end of the academic year, which is a year after, usually end of September. The date might differ depending on the calendar and the thing. So it's, in a way, it looks like it's a full year. However, it's not a full year, because this full year is just divided into the two academic sort of like a sectors. We'll call it semesters or terms. The one is called a winter term, which begins typically with the October and usually ends in the second week in January. So about the last week was the end of the present winter semester. Then there is a winter examination period, which typically lasts about the 4 weeks. It extends from the middle of the January to the middle of the February. During that part, there are no classes. Students are not supposed, or they're not asked to come into any classes or to sit any lectures or something. They're supposed to be at home or whatever place they choose, and to study and prepare themselves for the exams, which they need to sit for the given winter exam period. Then at the end of the winter exam period, again, as the beginning of the summer semester, which typically begins in the middle of the February. This year, for instance, there will be February 14th, and it will run until the end of May, or perhaps sometimes slightly beginning of June, again, depending on the calendar. And this is again followed by the summer exam period, which regularly lasts from the end of May till the end of June, or slightly beginning of July, depending upon the dates and the slots for the exams. Then there is sort of like a summer, kind of like a recess, which means like a greater part of July and August, where, you know, even the faculty staff takes the vacations and things. And if there are some exams missing, there's some academic duties which are still missing, they could be still completed from the beginning of the September till certain, I think usually second or third week in September, not till the 30th of September, as was just stated here as the end of academic year, but usually 1 week ahead. So students have certain time to attend the school, either physically or virtually, where the classes, lectures, practicals, and some official activities are kind of organized. And then the periods of examination, where the students have the free time and they have to study and prepare themselves for exams and whatever. And here, the policy is very simple. Sooner the exams are completed, more free time for a student. That's kind of clear policy. So as soon as the student figures it out, his life could be very productive in terms of time management, which is a key point for the successful studies with the university or faculty like this, to figure out how to properly organize time, how to use it up, and prevent too much of wasting it, which is what we usually do when we are younger. I remember when I was a student, I wasted a great deal of my time. I always kind of like messed around and think, and that was not really nice. I'm sorry, this is just not that much visible. I don't know, it's visible. Concerning exams, most of the exams in the Faculty of Medicine in Hradec Kralove are oral, meaning that the students have to come in person, usually. They have to choose from the set of questions they know in before. And after some time of preparation, they have to talk to an examiner or examination board, and they have to answer their questions, which might be perhaps slightly different than what you're used to, because there's lots of school facilities, they use, they say, a more convenient or perhaps even more objective way of the written exams. Of course, it doesn't mean that the written exams would not be part of our studies. That will be part of our studies as well. So lots of exams, especially like accredited exams, are kind of written form, but most of the final exams are oral. Rationale is simple. If the person wants to be a doctor and the doctor is supposed to talk to patients, doctor is supposed to express his own will and ideas and things, so the doctor should also know how to speak and how to explain things, and that is best sort of verified by the oral exam. Whether you like it or not, that's another thing. But I think certainly as a patient, I would really appreciate if my doctor would talk to me in a very cohesive and comprehensive way, rather than just trying to find the words and not being able to explain to me what's my problem. So that's just my point of view, and I fully agree with this thing. How many attempts do I have with the exam? Well, 3. The one regular, and in case something gets wrong and I do fail the exam, I have 2 other retakes. After that, things get more complicated. Better not to talk about this because that's the thing we don't want just to explain in detail at the moment. Now, right, okay, perhaps before I'll look at the HK, I'd like to, very briefly, because as I said, I'm not a travel agent, I have to say one more thing. The studies at our faculty, so all entire the course is a course based on the credit requirements. That's why it's kind of EU approved, because each subject is given a certain number of credit points, and that is another layer of the awareness the students should have to, because it's just not only about the passing subject or failing the subject, it's also about the certain number of credit points the students have to accumulate. But that will be just the song of those who are enrolled, and they don't need to, I mean, applicants should not be concerned with this. So now perhaps this brighter part of the story is kind of why HK. Well, I've been a patriot in HK. I was born in HK. I spent a greater part of my life, even though I lived in different countries in the world, and my family is not from HK. I do appreciate a certain layout of the place. It's been founded, especially before the Second World War, as the place of green. At that time, it was nicknamed as a saloon of the Republic. It's no longer true, I have to say, but still, we have a great deal of the greenery and a great deal of parks and things, and city layout is relatively convenient, and especially for walking and for easy navigation. Everything seems to be close at hand because we're not really a huge place. We're going to compare ourselves even to Prague, which is really an amazing place, but at the same time, it's just a nightmare as far as commuting comes to, and as far as kind of like normal walking through. So it's a nice place, plenty of parks. It's kind of friendly because we're smaller, so the people know better each other. It's very safe. It means nobody's really afraid to walk in the middle of the night in this deserted street and be afraid of the pickpockets and some kind of like that stuff. As I said, everything is close by. I mean, that's really a conveniency which often spoils our students, because they book their flats the 5 minutes walk from the faculty, and sometimes they're delayed on the classes because simply they think it's kind of 5 minutes, and they stop watching the time and think, not having it here probably in the map, but everything is within about the 20+ minutes the walking distance, which is amazing, especially now when everybody's concerned about the electric scooters and about the bicycles and things. So makes these distances even shorter. What do we offer here? We offer as a faculty a very well-equipped library, which of course features not only traditional sources of information in the books, but the books are getting a little out of fashion these days. So the modern teaching methods they stand on the e-courses, e-forums, e-sources, And I have to say that we do provide e-sources as well, which I guess is convenient for students, even some specialized teaching platforms. The one we usually quote here is kind of like an AMBUS used for the as an auxiliary help for the clinical the ears. It's free of charge, and I think it's kind of nice an environment both in the hospital as well as in other theoretical facilities. We've invested a lot of resources just to have renovated or modern and new facilities. So nothing is really kind of used up or kind of dirty, and I think so. We try to keep it up to certain standards whenever it comes to the old traditional building, as well as the first part of the new campus has been built close to the faculty teaching hospital or the university hospital. We're also proud, and along with the trend and the teaching, we opened a simulation center, which will be expanded, I hope, in the future, and which offers a really viable alternative and a prep phase for those who would want to practice in the bedside, because it allows the students to develop certain routine and for them to develop certain automated reactions before they touch on the patient, which is really excellent because in that case they will gain confidence, and they are also much more better off with the real human beings. Well, this is our first part of our new campus. It's been built in 2015, and hopefully we in a couple of years will finish it off with the second part of the campus. Then all the students will be centered in this place close by to hospital, along with the students of pharmacy. And there'll be true campus where everything would be at hand, and there'll be no reasons for complaining. And we could just bounce it back to students to say, yeah, now you have everything what you wanted, what your heart actually ached for, and now you have to prove yourself. So the new campus, about 50 meters from the main entry to the faculty hospital, which is really perfect. Many students, they learn throughout their studies that in order just to find the good job, and not only in certain countries, but also if they really inspire to be good doctors, they need to be interested in the research. Some of them, they're interested in their research because simply research is what makes the medicine. So again, along these lines, the faculty offers a lot of research opportunities. We inspire students to take part in our research projects. Students themselves try to organize sort of like a research activities. And we also offer for them certain incentives. One of our really selling points is incentive of scientific stay in one of the best facilities of research and medical facilities in the world. It's called a Mayo Clinic in Rochester. Of course, it's not taken for granted, and it's not for many, but it's for the best ones. But it's, again, incentive, which again, in the past, helped some of our past graduates to start their career in the US and simply see the world with a different eye. So the research is a very important part of the practice, and we do encourage students to do it. This is what I said on a Mayo Clinic in Rochester, but of course in other places as well. And this is just what we offer, but ultimately the decision is up to the student, because of course these days, in order to be a good doctor and secure a good place, it's just not enough just to be a good student, but also to offer something extra. And the research could be a very easy way towards this extra in UK, US, and anywhere else in the world. Well, the rest is what you all come to expect. So, of course, the basic needs to be satisfied. There is accommodation, there is a food, there is other things as students need for their life, day to day. But also, of course, sometimes in case that they have any trouble, we offer lots of support. My office is always open. I could always talk to people in need. And if my help is not enough, we have professionals who will take care of whatever academic or non-academic issues our students might have, which might interfere with his or her success with the studies, which is quite important. So we try to promote the communication in the students and offering them a range of helps. Finally, the student life, studying medicine doesn't mean that you have to lock yourself up in the monastery and for the next few years to forget the world. The way you study and the way you organize your life better, a lot more opportunities come to you. And again, these opportunities are entirely up to you. So HK is not a place which is in the middle of nowhere. There is a range of activities the students could get involved into. Some of them they're organized by international students by themselves. Some of them could be organized together with the students in the Czech programs. And some of them would come along as long as the students blend in with the local population, which is, I guess, the best way to do it. Because if I'm going to spend 6 years of my life in a foreign country, I would think myself to be ashamed if I won't learn the rudiments, at least rudiments of the local language and about the culture, about the habits, and explore a country a bit, because otherwise I would consider it as a waste of my life beyond, of course, the studies. So that reflects, or that goes also to various sport activities and things. Here, it's a standard and something which you come to be expected on the place like this, which I have to say, this year or upcoming academic year 22-23, we celebrate 30 years anniversary of the launching the programs of studying in English, which is for us kind of very important, and you might be part of it, which we'll be very happy about. Well, and this is the end of the entire story, the end of my story and of the story of students. If the students do it well, sooner or later end up here at this place. It's called Carolina. It's the place in the Prague, it's historical hall. Well, all those graduates are kind of, they are just somehow pronounced doctors. They're graduated and they're given the titles, and they could celebrate their status and start their new life. And at the same time, they will just become part of our growing alumni LFHK community, where they could follow what's going on in their alma mater, and they could also carry our own good name in their future life, both professional as well as a private. So I guess that's all what I wanted to tell you. I'm sorry that it took perhaps kind of a long time, and I hope that some of this information I gave you found some, or just rung the bell, and that you will be able to think about it. And in case that you will be having any questions, our students, myself, Paula, and all of us, we're more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much, and have a nice time. Take care. This is our contact, and stay with us. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Rudolph. Actually, that was 40 minutes when I actually look at the time that I did the introduction. So actually perfectly on time there, which is great for everyone who's heard that really informative presentation. If you could just end your screen share, then what we're going to do now is I'm going to lead some of the questions. We have a number of questions that have been asked on the Q&A feature and in the chat. A couple very specific ones I've just dealt with offline because they're not generic questions that everyone's going to benefit from. So I want to quickly go to the students, because obviously, you know, we've been working with the university for many years now, and some of the students are going to have very unique kind of experiences that perhaps myself, Professor Rudolph, or Pablo won't be able to actually share. And then I'm going to link that to some of the questions that have been asked actually. And so we may not deal with all the questions in the order they've been asked with. There's actually a question on YouTube that's come in, and that's going to take me straight to Marotti. Marotti, are you there? Are you okay? If you just unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm
there. Marotti's there. Now, Marotti's got two passports. You've got a British passport and a US passport. Yeah. And again, Professor Rudolph, this will probably involve you as well. Someone has asked about how the curriculum prepares you for perhaps the United States medical licensing examination. I know, Marty, that's something you're considering, to have the opportunity to go and work in the US as well as the UK. So is that something that you've actually, I know COVID has really caused a lot of issues on preparing and sitting USMLE exams, but I just want to know where you are in your journey for USMLE. And I know, Professor Rudolph, you have experience in the United States as well. So I will come back to you after Marotti's had the chance to give us her view and experience on that.
Yeah. So with regards to the USMLE, I was hoping to take it last summer, but as Ben said, COVID and everything kind of derailed my plans. I'm hoping to take it this summer though, and I will be at the end of my 5th year when I take it, which is, you know, for our faculty, we will have, it prepares us for basically the subjects that we will face in the USMLE, because by 5th year, you will have done, you know, the pharmacology, the pathology, the anatomy, the histology between 1st year and that time. Some people say it's better to take it after 4th year. But it just depends on when you carve out that time. Professor Rudolph already spoke about, you know, making sure that you manage your time well. So that way, if you finish your exams, you know, at the right time, you have a nice bulk of the summer to do with whatever you want, whether it's traveling or preparing for, you know, an exam like the USMLE. So yeah, it's not impossible. And we do have a few students, even in just the past year or so, who have taken the USMLE, done very well, and have gone and are now practicing in the US. So it's definitely attainable, and yeah, with good organization and preparation.
Professor Riddles, anything you wish to add to that? Because I know obviously as the Vice Dean, you have to sign off people who are going to go and sit the USMLE exams.
Right. I mean, officially, from the point of view of the faculty, I mean, there is nothing like a specialized preparatory course for USMLE, or the unique lessons, or some like a system which will guide through the students who are interested in USMLE. In fact, that also is based on, because it's, I mean, from the faculty, from the point of view of the faculty, it's also a question of what is the interest about it. Because of course, if 1 or 2 students are kind of interested, it's probably better and more practical that they, and this is what we kind of encourage, what I encourage myself, then we will just mediate their personal contact with the particular people in question, with the academics or with the experts, who would just help the given student with the particular aspects of the USMLE, especially sort of molding the knowledge they acquired throughout our course to the format of the questions in USMLE, because it's all about the format of the questions and the way the questions are asked. The different situation would that be if, say, tens of students would want to sit the USMLE and would really take it as a very serious thing. Then, of course, the faculty would have to do something, would have to respond with probably preparing some sort of a special, like a, not program, but a special way how to assist them better. But at the moment, as far as I know, very few students openly declare that they would want to sit the USMLE, and they would want to help with that. So of course, the faculty supports. In the past, it supported, but not on the concerted, officially declared way, but rather with helping individual cases. And I guess that's just how it worked in the past. You know, the thing is that the format of curriculum we have here and the way we teach is not to prepare the students exactly in the USMLE the way, for instance, the people take classes in the US universities. So there is this extra step which has to be taken. Like I would liken it to the driving license exam here in the Czech Republic, where you could either study the content of the law or you could study questions. And sometimes if you study only content of the law, you may fail the questions because you don't expect the same format. So you have to see the format of the questions and mold your knowledge to these questions in order to be successful, I guess. That would be my strategy. So certainly it's just not impossible.
Yeah, no, USMLE is definitely, am I on mute? I don't think I am. USMLE is definitely to do with exam technique. You know, that's the thing, is the questions are structured in a particular way to extract science knowledge, but they're put in a very clinically orientated way. So it is a question. But actually, there's plenty of resources available from various providers, which can, so you can actually get a lot of free resources, which can be quite useful, which is obviously the best place to start. So thanks to the person who asked us that specific question on YouTube. I'm going to start going down the questions that have been asked on Zoom. There's plenty of time, people, to ask more questions, so just tap them in, and then I'm going to kind of delegate certain questions to the students and to Pavla as we go through. Someone's asked a question here, and this is perhaps something which perhaps there is quite, especially from a UK perspective, people aren't particularly used to. Someone said about the entrance exam, they're asking why they need to complete a physics exam because they don't believe physics is necessarily medically related. And I can tell you now, whether it's how the nerve conducts an action potential, whether it is how the heart relates, or whether it's even about elasticity of tissues and the growth of bone, physics is instrumental to medicine in every single way. And in fact, Hasia, I think you probably went back to year one when you did your biophysics lessons. Is that the case?
Yeah, I did biophysics in first year.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I have a maths background, but not a physics background. But it was still quite easy to pick up. And of course, the exam is a bit more difficult if you haven't done physics before, but the majority of us haven't done physics. What's even worse is some people come from countries where they weren't told to take compulsorily chemistry in sixth form. So they struggle even more when we get to second year and we have biochem. So yeah, it's not necessarily a hindrance to not have done physics, but to say it isn't important for medicine is wrong, because it really is.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially on problem orientated or case-based courses, the physics is actually hidden inside the cases, and it's perhaps you're actually dealing with physics by stealth to some degree. On a traditional medical curriculum, like in Hradec Kralove, it's there in letters: physics, biophysics. You know what you're going to study, which perhaps is different than, say, UK-style curriculums. In relation to the entrance exam, although it's titled physics, you'll find that your mathematics it's effectively like applied mathematics. Physics is maths, just embedded in real world situations like mechanics, etc. And even on the universities that gave students the option between physics and maths, often students found the maths more difficult than the physics if they perhaps had maths A level or maths at the IB compared to taking physics. So I would say that if I don't be put off by the word physics in the exam, and bear in mind, as we said, for this particular entrance exam for Hradec Kralove, 50% of the actual entrance exam is biology in one form or another. So 25% of it is physics. And if you have a good grounding in mathematics, you will be well set up to actually go through the entrance exam. And in the end of the day, everyone is taking the same exam. So it's not like suddenly you're at a disadvantage. Everyone is dealing with the same particular questions or the same papers that come in any academic year. Someone's asked a question about what happens if you come from a country that has 11 years of education instead of 12. Now, I'm going to link that to one of the things Professor Rudolph said in the presentation, and someone said about their diploma coming on in July. The requirements of the university in terms of the what's called general nostrification process means that you need to effectively have the eligibility to enter university in the country that you come from based on their education system. And there is a process to go through where the universities have delegated responsibility to approve your qualification. Now, depending on the country you come from, the procedures are a little bit different. We have a procedure for the UK, which is really well organised and well run now, and we've kind of clarified that with all the different faculties in the Czech Republic, and that works effectively. So if you come from an A-level curriculum, even if it's international A-level, we have a particular procedure for that. If you come from international baccalaureate, there's a particular procedure for that. It doesn't matter if you're getting your diploma in July, like this person has just asked, because as long as you're graduating from high school in that particular year, you're eligible to enroll in the university. You don't need to have graduated from high school before the application itself is made. The application can be made as long as you're in your final year of schooling. Pavla, I think you might have the answer to this question. A lot of medical schools across Europe, and especially in the UK, they require students to be 18 on enrollment. What's the case in Hradec Kralove? What's the rules on that?
All right, so of course it's better if the student is 18, because for us within Czech Republic, they are considered as adults, so independent on their parents. If they're not, then they will probably at the beginning just have to submit a consent of their parents to pass all the rights to sign documents on them so they can act as adults. and be in charge, basically. That eases up things, but we do not have the limits in terms that we would not accept them.
Okay, I think the thing in the UK is obviously that we get much earlier clinical exposure like you do in the Czech Republic. And I'm going to actually kind of go over to Adrija in a moment, Adrija, because the first 2 years of the program are very theoretical, very heavy based on the theory before you move to the clinical side. In terms of just something that I think students need to be aware of is there is a kind of a transition into clinical education from the theoretical. I know actually you haven't been feeling too well, that's why your camera's not on. But if you could just tell to us a little bit about how you find that transition from, say, the 2 years of preclinical into the clinical attachments when you started that into year 3 into year 4.
Yeah, so initially it was, sorry, can you hear me, by the way?
We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, so yeah, initially it was quite difficult because obviously, you know, you learn so much theory and it's hard to apply that knowledge. However, like the doctors are really well trained and, you know, they're supervising you well. So, you know, they try and integrate all the necessary knowledge that you need. So you're not really at a disadvantage. It is difficult. However, the more patients you see, which you will be seeing starting from year 3, and I'm currently in my 4th year. So we're also seeing a lot of patients and you get a lot of exposure with the patients, and that way you can integrate in the theory, the anatomy, the physiology, the biology, everything that you've learned, pharmacology, everything. So yeah, it comes with time, definitely.
So there's one question there which came, a more recent question, is the teaching style integrated? Now, what you've got at Hradec Kralove, which is typical for most of Europe, is the traditional medical curriculum, where the 2 years are preclinical sciences, where effectively you're learning about the normal body. And then when you get to year 3, you will then start applying the abnormal. And then as you progress from, say, year 3 to year 5, you're learning how to manage patients with those conditions, not managing the conditions, because we don't manage conditions, we manage people with conditions. So you're actually managing then the abnormal. So you might learn the normal lungs in years 1, year 2, the normal anatomy, physiology, histology, the normal biophysics related to lung expansion, etc., like we said before. And then when pathology sets in, like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COVID, how does that change in the anatomy or the physiology, or how the tissues behave under stress and strain, etc., or whether you have a tumor, etc. And then manage patients with those conditions as you go through that program towards your 6th year, which Haja and Marotti will be approaching towards the end of this year, which is their full internship year. We are going to touch on the internship year a little bit later on into the questions. Someone asked a question, because it's a master's degree, they asked, do you have to have a bachelor's degree to get an admission? That's no, and it's just a little bit of a terminology issue there. In the Czech Republic, medicine and dental medicine are what's called undergraduate masters is the title. In other words, it separates it from as a bachelor's degree because it is effectively a professional degree and lasts for longer than a standard bachelor's degree. So the admission is direct from high school, whether you're coming from the Irish Leaving Certificate or A-level or IB or the US high school diploma, etc. It is direct admission from high school. However, you can actually gain admission if you have a degree. So we have got many students who've got 1 degree. I don't think any of the 3 are postgrads, are you? Did you do a degree before? But we have
No.
Marotti, did you have a degree before you enrolled in Hradec?
Yes, I did.
Okay, right. We're going to work on that in a moment, because for some students who do have a degree, they may have decided to go and then study medicine afterwards, and they get to spend a glorious 9 years at university. I would say there are some advantages to having a degree before you do medicine, just because you're that bit older, a bit wiser, you've got perhaps a different knowledge, and perhaps you've got your university experience out of your system before that heavy year in first year at university. But if you have a Bachelor's of Science degree, yes, you can still apply, and your criteria entrance exam are the same as the school leavers. Actually, there's no difference, you're all treated equally. I'm going to go through some of the generic questions first. Are the scholarships? Unfortunately not. 12,000 euros is a pretty good fee for medicine. International students coming to the UK now have to spend over 40,000 British pounds, plus the living costs in the UK, which are getting more expensive as Brexit bites. Unfortunately, no scholarships of any note, really. So yeah, you're going to have to pay the fees, because that's how Professor Rudolph and Pavla are able to get their salaries at the end of the month. But as you'll find, 12,000 euros a year, but extremely low living costs compared to most major cities in Europe. I think, how would you say, Pavla, how cheap is it, can you say, compared to Prague in Hradec Kralove? Can you give us some ideas? Even Prague, the city close by.
Oh, I mean, in general, we should probably talk about costs in Czech Republic, right? Prague is very expensive because it's a capital city, and it's used to tourists and people from all over the world. But for us, like a ticket with public transportation would be something ridiculous to you guys, like 50 pence. Ride with trains, that's a laughing matter. Students get huge discounts on trains, so getting that 100 kilometers on a train from here to Prague is what, about £1? Really. And with food as well, it's very cheap, very affordable. Even like you can go out to a restaurant, have a nice meal, and it's not a big deal in terms of money. So I would say that's a very convenient part of the deal. Like that's a very good thing.
Yeah, I think that's where the big savings are going to be, really, in living costs. You know, and again, you're even 12,000 euros in the Czech Republic, especially compared to the faculties in Prague, is lower, and obviously then it compounds by a lower living costs as well. We're going to filter through some of these questions, and I do want to bring the students into a lot more. And I think I'm going to delegate to, I'll go back to Hajra on this one. It says, the entrance exam, we do have our own preparation program, which can help you get ready for the entrance exam and refine your knowledge. But have you got any tips, really, for I know the entrance exams for you were 4 and 5 years ago now. So, and they were probably the easiest exams you've taken across the last 5 years. But have you got any tips about how students can probably best settle themselves down for the entrance exams? I've got my own ideas, but I'd like to hear from the people that have actually done the exams themselves.
I think just generally brushing over your biology, chemistry, maths, and possibly physics if you've done it, A-level knowledge, and just getting that general knowledge down. And a lot of the test for me, from my memory, was quite logical. I mean, some things you have to know, you either know them or you don't know them. But I was able to get by on my exam without doing too much preparation. I didn't take the preparation course or anything like that. I just went with my kind of A-level knowledge, and it was not so bad. It was definitely possible without doing so much extra work.
Yeah. Someone's asked about international A-level. No, you have to have 3 A-levels to, someone said, can you apply with international AS? No, you have to have 3 A-levels to go through the general nostrification. And even if you had AS levels, it wouldn't be just recommended, because the level of studies in year 1 is definitely a level above full A-level. That's one of the questions we've had there. Someone said, can you transfer faculties? The realistic answer is no, because effectively each faculty operates like a separate university. So if you're going to apply partway through to go to another faculty, you have to restart the application process and then redo the entrance exams, and then not all of your credits might be recognized across faculties. So if you were thinking about applying to different faculties, just apply at the outset, and once you've made your decision, once you've got your offers, stick to it and spend the next 6 years there. That's the quickest and most stress-free way to get through your medical education. Okay, let's try and go through some of these. We've got a lot of questions coming in. So, is the exam multiple answer? Not for Hradec Kralove, it's 1 question, 1 answer, like Professor Rudolph told us in the presentation. I'll go through some of those ones. I've got some questions there. Answered that question. Okay, someone's asked, what aspects of physics would I have to focus on for medicine? If you look at the entrance exam papers that Professor Rudolph directed you to, but also some of the materials that we have in our prep system when you're prepping for the exam, that will focus your attention very much on the physics. But you're going to find a lot of the physics is very mathematically orientated, like mechanics, etc. So, and as like I said, don't be scared by the word physics. Effectively, it's a multiple choice exam, and you'll find physics can be dealt with quite logically. There is this fear about the word physics. And when people think they're going to get questioned about black holes and things like that, no, I've never ever found a patient with a problem with a black hole in their abdomen. So there might be bigger problems if someone had a black hole that close to them, to be honest. Spaghettification just comes to mind. So someone's asked, when's the best time to visit the faculty prior to enrolment? Well, if you want to visit the faculty just to see the faculty in person before you decide to apply, there's an open day coming up shortly, I believe.
Very true. We will be welcoming students on 11th of February, which is Friday. So you can have a nice prolonged weekend in Czech Republic and pop by to HK. Otherwise, if that would not suit you, you're always welcome to message us and schedule an individual visit. We do that, and it's fine, right? So if you want to see the place, which we highly recommend, of course, it's great to get acquainted before you actually come for those 6 years. So yeah, just message us. We will pick a date and we will take you around. It's the easiest thing.
I'm going to deal with a question that's come up from multiple people here. For those that don't live in the UK, will there be an online exam? We're not, as it stands at the moment, we're moving back to in-person exams as we're managing COVID. Okay, all the exams are scheduled in person. Every medical faculty in the Czech Republic and most people that I know agree that the best way to examine students is to meet them in person and examine them live. You know, effectively, you don't treat patients online, etc. We have had to do online exams as mandated by the epidemiological situation for the last 2 years, but the legislation does push us towards doing in-person exams. If you're not from the EU or you need a visa to come to London, Medical Doorway will give you the letter of invitation so you can actually come and sit the exams in London. And obviously London's one of the most accessible cities in the world. Alternatively, you can even travel to the Czech Republic and we can book you in for exams at the faculty. We don't know about the Hong Kong exam yet. We have scheduled it in person, but we will have to wait and see what happens with COVID over the coming months and whether Hong Kong does open up, because it's still a zero COVID policy. If we have to move one of the exams online for that reason, we will announce that in good time once I've had the approval from the faculty for that, because that's not something I can just decide. There has to be a decision-making process to go through to demonstrate that everything is done above board and correctly. So at the moment, there's no plans for online exams. Please watch this space in case anything does change. And obviously, if the epidemiological situation or we get a new virus coming up sometime soon, which we don't know, it might come around the corner rather than another 100 years from now, then that might be something that happens. But we can't really make that decision at this moment in January for something that is scheduled to take place in May. If you want to see where all the exams are that we run, medicaldoorway.com, click on exams, you'll see all of the exam dates and all the locations there. Someone's asked about teaching style integrated. I think we've dealt with that. It's a traditional medical curriculum. There's other webinars I've got which deal with that particular issue, and you can take a look at some of those slides there. And this is a question, I'm going to go to Adija again. Obviously, you're on the English language program, okay? How do you find starting to engage with patients in the clinical environment in Czech? And I'm actually going to go around the three of you here, okay? So I'm just going to actually talk about, so obviously you are studying English, but you will be speaking to patients in Czech. How have you found that transition? Adija, can we start with you at 4th year, then I'm going to move to the 5th year students shortly.
Yeah, so I think in our 2nd year and 1st year, we did basic Czech terminology, and that teaching was very good. And they also teach you how to take a basic medical history, and that is very crucial when you're dealing with patients. And like I said before, the more you speak to patients, the more exposure you have, you can put that into practice. So yeah, initially it was very difficult, I'm not going to lie, and it still is. But yeah, like if you talk to, like when you're in the shops or something, like I try and order in Czech as well. Like the more you speak to native speakers, it really helps. I know a lot of people use Duolingo as well, so that is also really good. So yeah, the more you practice, it gets easier eventually, definitely.
There's nothing like immersion for learning the local language. My language skills in a particular language are developing a lot at the moment because of certain levels of immersion, and I wasn't a linguist at all. I did 3 years of Spanish and got a D in Spanish, but I speak more than the 3 other languages I speak more of than Spanish now, including my own local dialect. Okay, Marotti, how have you found it? Because you're 5th year now, so can you guys communicate as fluently in Czech as you can in English?
Definitely not. But as Adria was saying, like immersion is really important. Duolingo definitely helps. And the nice thing is that the doctors are never going to leave you hanging completely. They will never just say, okay, take this history from a patient and, you know, you're on your own, they'll kind of try and lead you towards the right questions to ask if you need help, remind you about, you know, the Czech terminology for the system that you're dealing with. But definitely don't take first and second year Czech for granted, I would say. Like, actually pay attention, you know, try and focus, because after that, there are electives that you can take for Czech language, but they're not mandatory. So if you don't take them, you're basically done learning Czech after second year, but you still have to speak it third year, fourth year, fifth year, sixth year. So you could take those electives if you want to, just keep it fresh and fluent in your mind. But otherwise, yeah, just try and practice as regularly as you can. And make Czech friends maybe as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that, because a lot of the local students who are on the Czech language program want to speak to the international students, because they want to improve their English, because Czech doctors go all across the world. If you look at some of the things Czech doctors have done in the United States and the UK, it's fantastic. Hasha, how have you found becoming a native?
I wouldn't say I'm even halfway there yet, but I can communicate, you know, somewhat with the local. I could probably save my life in Czech, so I think that's pretty good for now. But in terms of the hospital, I think it's really important to try and engage with the patients as early as possible. There's more of a fear, I'd say, than with actually knowing how to ask questions, especially with the major systems. I think the only subject where there is difficulty is, right now I'm doing psychiatry, and it's extremely difficult to ask, even in English, some of the questions you need to ask to psych patients. So with that, we have the doctors on hand to translate for us. But generally, by fifth year, most people are able to take a history, at least a basic one, from a patient, and find out the main issues that are wrong with them. So I don't think that's something to worry about, even if you are a complete novice to learn languages.
Like, if you already speak more than one language, you're automatically programmed to pick up a third and a fourth a lot easier. So if this is something that I think anyone who's looking at this either on live now or the recording is thinking about doing, my advice is just the earlier you start, the better. And the basics can be picked up for free off YouTube. You know, the basic hello, how are you, would you like a coffee, those kinds of things. They're very easy to pick up, and they form the foundations of how you open up a language, because they're ways into conversations. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. That's the other thing I'll say about that. Someone said, would I need to travel to London to sit the exams? Well, if you want to sit the London exams, yeah, you need to travel to London. But obviously, if you're in Europe or close to the UK or in the UK, then we do run the exams right in the heart of London in Russell Square, which is by Russell Square. The PowerPoint, I think, will be on the video, so please just keep an eye on that one. We're not handing the PowerPoint out to everyone, because that was a huge amount of people that have signed up. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about exams, guys. Professor Rudolph talked about the exams during the presentation, that you get your first attempt and then you get 2 re-exams. And one of the differences between the UK and the Czech Republic is you choose when you book your exams in. So you're the master of your own fate in terms of how you check your exams. And the other thing as well is, if you perhaps don't pass the exam the first time, you're not capped to the lowest possible mark in your re-exam like you are in the UK. Ladies, we all fail things at times. We always struggle to get through certain exams. What's your experience of the examinations been? Marotti, can I start with you?
Yes. So not to scare anyone off, but even if you are the smartest person at your high school or your, you know, secondary school or whatever, you will probably fail at some point. You know, it's just part of the learning experience here. In first year, you have lots of tests throughout each week. They're kind of mini tests to make sure, micro tests to make sure that you are studying, right? And it's very normal to, especially in the first few weeks, to take those and not pass. And it's so interesting, because when I was in first year, I would panic so much, like, oh my gosh, I failed. And the upper years would be like, it's fine, it's normal. But you know, you're panicking because you're not used to failing, but it's completely normal. You're feeling out the system, you're getting used to it. And over time, you will find that you're more confident and everything. And with the oral exams, they can seem quite daunting. But honestly, it's, as Professor Rudolph was saying, it's a good way of making sure that you actually understand what you're talking about. as opposed to just picking random bits of information from the subject. So the exam system is different. That's the best way I can describe it. It's different, but it's useful, and you will get used to it eventually. So yeah.
Okay, Haj, do you have anything to add to what Marotti has just told us? Because failure is normal. At some point we fail in something, and it's not that fact that we fail is the issue. It's what we do when we fail and how to become successful after we fail. That's the important thing. What's your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of chances to get back up and keep going. I'd say, especially with first year, that is where people experience failure the most. After first year, things generally tend to be a bit more smooth sailing. But everyone fails something at some point, whether it's we have tiny exams or we have credits, it's like guaranteed that you will fail something, even if it's a small test. So it's not something to panic about, but inevitably it does happen. But it's just letting that not get to your heart and just keep going with it, because there's a lot of other stuff to do anyway. You're always going to be rushed off your feet in first year anyway. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Adricia, anything you want to add there?
No, I think Marotti and Haj just said it all. It is very normal to fail. And as you said, resilience is very key for this university. And I feel like, for example, in first year, I remember after I failed my histology exam, I was very upset and I thought, it's the end of the world. However, like when I gave my retake, I was actually much better prepared, and you actually build on the knowledge and you're going to be much more better prepared than someone else, for example. So yeah, there's a positive to everything. And yeah, I guess in first year, it is difficult because you're new to the system. And as you said, in the UK, we're not really used to having oral exams. But yeah, over the years, it gets better and you get used to the system and it's a lot more manageable. So yeah, don't get put off by that fact.
I think you grow as well. I think everything gets tougher, but you grow. You know how you've got to adjust. It's like running a marathon, isn't it? You can't just run 26 miles on day one. You have to build your way up and condition yourself to perhaps a different way of working, like you've said. And it's really good to hear that, because I think students, especially students now, it's like failure is seen constantly as a negative thing. No one's allowed to fail. And sometimes the first time we fail at something is at university or is even in employment at some point. I think sometimes failing earlier on in life gives you that life lesson that you can actually then, it's not the end of the world. Perhaps it's a learning experience for you to get better than you were before. As I said, the more failures you have, the more successes you have, because you will learn from it. Someone said here about students on a gap year after high school. It doesn't make any difference to your application at all. It does make your nostrification process a bit easier at the last stage, but it doesn't have any issue. It doesn't affect your application whatsoever if you're on a gap year. We have many students, especially over these COVID years, who have taken 1 or 2 gap years before they've decided to apply. Someone's asked about student life. Someone's asked about part-time jobs. I'm afraid there's nothing part-time about studying medicine. So you're not going to have any time for a part-time job. And to be quite honest, if you're trying to find a service level part-time job, you won't be happy with the salary that you get paid anyway for the time invested. So my advice would be you're not going to find a part-time job because there's not enough hours in the day to study medicine and have a part-time job. But student life, from what I can see in terms of the restaurants I've been to, the bars I've been to, and the places you can see, student life in Hradec Kralove has a lot to offer.
Yeah, I agree. There is also the student union, the International Student Union, that tries to get together. We were a bit derailed by COVID, definitely, but things are picking back up again. And there's always something going on, whether you're someone who likes to, go for a bar crawl, or they try and organize, even like just different activities like puzzle nights, games nights, stuff like that, trips to Prague, Halloween party. So there's definitely something for everyone. Sports as well. There are different sports teams: basketball, football, volleyball, I think even. So yeah.
Haja, anything else to add? I don't know how you found. You've been there for 5 years, so I don't think you've locked yourself away for the 5 years in your room studying your histology.
Not fully. I have ventured outside occasionally, but I'm a lot more I like to stay inside a lot more, but there's been more of a focus on like non-alcoholic events, because I know a lot of people come from traditional families. So that's something that I personally find quite important. And there has been an emphasis on that recently with puzzle nights, for example, and integration with Czech students and stuff like that. So it's quite nice to find events like that here as well.
Good.
and places where you can just talk to people.
And the thing about the Czech Republic, it's a staunchly secular country. So there's if you have a particular, you're not going to be excluded from anything because of your religious beliefs, etc. So that's a very positive thing, really. Right, let's go through the last few questions. And again, this is because of students who are use different application systems. No, there's no specific grade you need on A levels or the IB. As long as you successfully graduate from that program, then you're eligible to enroll. The focus is the entrance exam. So if you're used to the UK system where you have to apply, get a conditional offer and get a particular grade, you're going to find that the Czech system doesn't bear any correlation to that kind of system at all. So it's all based on the entrance exam and then successfully graduating, even with the lowest possible score on the IB or A levels. I do have to say, however, if you are literally at the lowest possible score on the IB or A levels, the likelihood of you passing the entrance exam is pretty low, and there may be other routes we take for your education to get you ready for medicine if that's the case. No, you can't transfer credits from the IB diploma. This is a medical degree, a regulated medical degree. You are going to be taught everything you need to be taught, and there'll be no exceptions, and you can't even transfer credits from bachelor's degrees if you've done them. You know, you're on a medical course, be prepared to spend the next 6 years and do all the modules that everyone has to do. You don't require maths analysis and approaches at a higher level to be a candidate, no at all, as long you just simply have to clear that entrance exam and graduate with your IB diploma. Someone's asked about A levels. I take biology, chemistry and physics for AS. Which would you advise continuing to A level? Which would be the most beneficial? I would advise you taking all three of those, because you're going to need 3 full A levels to enroll at the university, and those are the 3 subjects which are directly aligned to the vast majority of the entrance exams, not just for Hradec Kralove, but some of the other faculties as well. And then I think there is a link on the there is a link to the past papers that are on the university website. Again, we have a number of resources available as well, which we've developed over a while. Someone's asked, where can we find live updates and announcements? We tend to publish everything on the website, and then we push that onto our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, and occasionally like this, we will push this out as well. So I would suggest keep an eye on the Facebook page, keep an eye on the YouTube page as well for different webinars that we do. And then we will change information on the website as and when we change it, and then publish that along with announcements on Instagram and YouTube. That's the best way we can do that. I then just answered a question that I then removed. So let me just check I haven't. Okay, that's been fine. Okay, and then says, does the Czech university education have a degree classification system like 2-1 or first? Now, it doesn't have that same kind of system, but you can, I believe you can graduate with what's called honours. Is that still the case in the medical course? Professor Rudolph?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I just, they call it summa cum laude, so you could have so-called the red diploma. So when you're really at the top of the class, you have. Just every year, we usually have a couple of students from both programs, Czech and international programs, being at this top of the class. And this might be associated or might not also with the special like a prize from the dean as for the recognition of the excellent study results and things.
Okay, yeah. So most, but they don't have this system like we have in the UK where you have first class, second class, upper, second class, lower, third at all. They don't have that system, but they do have you graduate with your diploma, and there is the potential to have this enhanced award, which Professor Rudolph says, if you are an exceptional student. And Maroti did correct me, actually, and I want to say thank you, Maroti, for typing that in. While there are no general scholarships, there is a scholarship while you're on the programme if you are determined to be an excellent student with an average grade of 1, which is effectively the top grade. So what has anyone actually received that scholarship, Maroti?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Yes. So people do every year people do receive that recognition of good grades. They don't go shouting about it necessarily, but it does happen. So it's definitely a good incentive.
So I imagine it's in the way of some form of tuition fee discount if you are a top grade student across the board, yes? How does it work, Pavla?
It's actual money to your account.
Oh,
So
right, even better.
yeah, it's a very nice pocket money to have some fun, you know.
Yeah.
So, and we have also heard that there's like more and more students reaching the acquired average to get the scholarship. So that's a nice incentive if you're working hard, which is in your own interest, you know, then to get this on top of it.
Wonderful. Okay, I think Professor Reels had an urgent call coming through. Someone's asked, is there a dropout rate from your course? If so, why the students may leave the course, such as homesickness, not being able to keep up with the course? Yeah, some students don't make it. Now, this is not just the case at Hradec Kralove, this is the case at any medical school, or any even university as well. And I've been a university academic in the past. International students, some do suffer with homesickness. You know, I've seen that myself in the UK. We've had international students here and some have struggled and then returned back home if it's perhaps not what they expected. For some students find that medicine isn't for them. Their ideas of what medicine is and the realities of it don't necessarily correlate. And some students find that's the case for them. Again, some students academically don't reach the particular grade. But like I said, it's not so much that they are not good enough. It's just that perhaps their response to, like the student said before, perhaps the response to failing something isn't as constructive as it could be if they were thinking about failure in a particularly constructive way. So there is an element of dropout, and some students decide to transfer back to their home countries at some point. Some countries have that system in place to do that, not the UK. So you'll find that the reason students often sometimes do leave the program is multifactorial. It's never just one story. Every student is individual. Someone has asked a question, and this is a really good question. I'm so happy this one's been asked, actually. And we're going to go around just in the order on the screen that I've got you guys in. So we'll start off with Milotti. Specifically to the students, what would you have done differently or wish you would have been aware of when starting your medical journey? That has got to be the best question I've had in all the webinars I've done for the last 12 months, and this is the first one of the year. So this is a real putting you on the spot now, guys. Milotti, what would you say? What would you have done differently or wish you'd been aware of before you started this journey?
This sounds very, very cliche. I don't mean it to, but it goes by extremely quickly. And I was told that when I started, and I kind of rolled my eyes and said, 6 years is going to take forever, but I'm almost at the end, and it has gone by extremely quickly. So in light of that, prioritize, remember, no matter what happens, remember why you're here. So going back to the person that was asking about part-time jobs, in first year, don't even think about it, honestly. Second year, third year, maybe, if you find something on the side, but always remember why you're here. You're here for med school, so don't let anything else get in the way of that. At the same time, try to make friends. There are a few students, it doesn't happen often, but there are a few students who come here, and because they're like, okay, I'm just here for med school, I want to focus, they don't go outside, they don't interact with other people, they kind of just keep to themselves. And you need other people, because when you get to higher years, not just for friendship, but when you get to the upper years, you need to be able to practice, let's say OSCEs, stuff like that. Who are you going to practice with if you don't have any friends, right? So build your community, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, you study with them, that kind of thing. And yeah, I wish I had known just how quickly it goes by, so I can make sure to, always prioritize, and yeah, that kind of thing. So yeah.
No, I can vouch for that. I still remember the colour of my wall in my student accommodation when I was at university, back when the dinosaurs were around. So, and it feels like yesterday. Right, I'm gonna go around. Hasha, again, what would you have done differently or wish you'd been aware of before you began this particular journey to medicine?
I think I would have changed the way I organized myself, my documents and stuff like that. I think in first year, I was using a lot of paper and I was writing stuff down, and you lose things, especially with subjects that are very content heavy, like anatomy and histo. And I wish I would have gone paperless a lot sooner. I think it sounds like a silly thing, but now I'm in 5th year, and when I have a small query from something that was back in 2nd year, I can just kind of type and search, oh, this word, and I can find everything I've studied about it before, and that'll remind me, oh, I've seen this. And I think I wish I'd done that from 1st year, getting everything organized in terms of my papers.
Yeah, prior proper planning prevents poor performance, and I have cleaned that one up. Ajija, so what would you suggest?
Yeah, for me, I think the importance of balancing time. I remember within like the first few years, so first year to third year, you know, there's a lot of micro tests, a lot of exams, credits, everything. And I was so bogged down with the studies that I forgot to do other stuff. And, you know, it was only until after third year I realized that, you know, you need to go out, you need to socialize more, you need to do more, be more active basically in the community. And it's really important. Of course, you're going to have lots of exams, and you're going to feel stressed out, but you need to also do other stuff, hobbies that you enjoy. And the ISU is really good for that. You know, there's lots of events, social events, non-alcohol drinking events. So there's everything for everyone. And I wish someone told me that earlier when I was in first year.
Okay, fantastic. So that's a really good thing to hear, because you're going to be spending 6 years, for those still tuned in and listening, you're going to be spending 6 years at university. And for those that are perhaps coming from countries which would ordinarily need a visa just to visit the Czech Republic on vacation, you will have the ability to travel all across Europe visa-free for 6 years on your Schengen residency permit. So you can go and visit Greece in the summer. You can then go to Madrid. You can go to Paris. Those kinds of things, which I think in the vacation periods are certainly things you will do, because you probably won't have the chance to do them to the same level when you're working as a doctor after you graduate. Okay, but fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking that question. It was a unique one. It's not one we've had before, and I think really good for anyone who's still online listening to this live or who's watching the recording. Thank you very much. The last question, which is more of a generic question, which has been put onto YouTube, is just the curriculum in Hradec Kralove. Is it the same as the one at first faculty? And I would say the two faculties, Hradec Kralove and first faculty, probably have the most similar curriculums of all the different faculties within Charles University, as well as the Czech Republic. I think, Professor Rudolph, I think I'm correct in making that assertion, yes?
Yes, you are. Our faculty in a Prague one, they have the same basis and almost same arrangement of the subjects. So in practical terms, also the transfers between those two faculties are sort of easiest. Not that easy as one might think, but still easiest because practically the same philosophy, same arrangement, same sort of order, and same course, with a couple of course, a couple of tiny differences, but they don't usually matter. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's actually all of the questions that have been asked. And there's some fantastic questions. They're both on YouTube and live on Zoom today. We've gone to 20 to 8, 20 to 9 in the Czech Republic, so it is getting on a bit further than we expected. So I'm not going to keep anyone any longer. So if anyone does have any questions that they haven't asked yet, just email hello@medicaldoorway.com. Or you can actually go onto our website and book a consultation there. The application form for the Czech Republic programs is on the Medical Doorway website. Please fill that one in. Don't go to the university directly, because it causes duplication. All sorts of weird, wonderful things happen when we get duplication. So fill in the application form on the Medical Doorway website, and then we can get you booked in for the exams. The one thing to state is that obviously Britain has left the European Union. So the British students who are in the Czech Republic didn't need to apply for a visa. We do need to apply for the long stay study visa now. The procedure has changed significantly for British students, but we are fully set up for that and have processed all the visas for all of our British students last year. The one thing I will say is the earlier we start that process, the better. So if you are ready for the exams, please do take it in April. There is still time if we do the exam in June, but it might require a trip back to the UK to collect your visa. If you're a non-European Union student who can't travel to the Czech Republic visa-free for 90 days, then you do have to take those exams as early as possible, because the visa process can take some time. And that's not because the documentation is difficult, it's just because availability for appointments can become a problem later on if you leave it too long. So that's just one thing to kind of, for students who perhaps have not considered that before, to now consider. As there are no more questions, I want to say a huge thank you to Marotti, Hansha and Aditya. I want to say a fantastic thank you to Pavla and Professor Rudolph, who again I saw for the first time in 2 years back at the RSM in November, and we did have a jolly nice evening the night before that as well to kind of catch up, which it was long overdue. And I'm looking forward to being back in the Czech Republic and Hradec Kralove before too long. Thank you so much for everyone for giving this time. I want to say thank you on behalf of everyone who's tuned in and who's watched this on our different social media platforms and on Zoom. You've given out your time really free to advise people on the fantastic opportunities at Charles University in Hradec Kralove. I want to say thanks for everyone who's tuned in this evening to actually listen to this and the questions that have been asked. Another thank you has just come on the chat feature. And without any further ado, I'm going to say thank you, good evening, good night, good afternoon if you are watching us from the United States, etc. And I hope to see you in our next one. Please keep an eye on the social media channels. We do have more webinars coming up over the next few months. And I hope that I'll be supporting more students who've been here today into Hradec Kralove this coming September. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.